So we're really getting into one of my favorite portions of the season. Recruiting is going wild as some of the nation's top prospects are making their college decisions. Fall camps are right around the corner, and by extension, the season will be here before we know it. But today, we need to talk about an institution that is flying up recruiting boards, and I don't expect it to stop anytime soon. And of course, today we're going to be discussing the Texas Longhorns. Before we do, though, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you surprised at Texas's rise up the recruiting boards? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And I want to see if we can get 50 subscribers from this video alone by Thursday, and if we're able to do that, I'll be putting together a joint video with some Texas content creators that I know y'all will love. But having said all that, let's jump right into this because we have a lot to discuss as Texas is flying up the recruiting boards, currently sitting as the number 3 overall class per 24/7 Sports. And when we look at it, they're in a really good position with 18 members in this class and an average recruit rank of just over 91. And whenever you're in the summer and you have 18 members of your class, that means you have enough members of your class that you can kind of feel very comfortable moving forward and really focus in on the few prospects you want to add in, but you also don't have to do a ton of work recruiting during the season. So that's where you'd love to be. I think the Texas coaches are very excited of where they currently sit and the battles they still remain in. Because when we look at this, Texas is still in the running for some of the nation's top prospects. Some prospects we're going to get into a bit later in this video, but first, we need to talk about some of the additions Texas has gotten that we haven't been able to talk about because I just got back from vacation. Specifically 2 names, one on offense, one on defense. And we'll start with the offensive side of the ball because Texas on offense right now is in a really unique position. Because when they add in Johntay Cook is now going to be a part of a wide receiver room that is as talented as any in college football when you look at that Texas Longhorn wide receiver room. There is so much ability, and I know the Texas faithful have got to be excited about the possibilities that are in that room. Because whenever we're talking about Texas and whenever we're asking what are the biggest questions for the Longhorns this upcoming season, for me, I've said it multiple times and I'm sorry I'm going to say it again, I have 2 big questions for the Longhorns. 1, offensive line, and 2, defense. And if I talk about the offensive line, notice I didn't say anything about the quarterback. Because if the offensive line isn't going to give the quarterback enough time to do what he needs to do, I have a hard time laying blame at the feet of the quarterback, specifically a young quarterback, and Texas might just have that in Quinn Ewers. Phenomenally talented, but young, and if the offensive line isn't helping him, I'm going to have a real tough time laying all the blame at his feet. But what we do know about Texas is that offense was good last year, and they were good with a shaky offensive line. They now have more talent as far as skill positions are concerned, and if that offensive line can improve, this is going to be an offense that you have got to watch out for. They have the ability at running back, they have the ability at tight end, and they certainly have the ability at wide receiver. So the skill positions for the Longhorns are absolutely not in question. They have talent there in troves, and if that offensive line just gives the quarterback enough time, they're going to be a dangerous offense. I'm not saying the offensive line has to be the number 1 offensive line in the nation. I don't know that that's realistic because the Texas Longhorns are going to be relying on a lot of young guys. But if there can be improvement, this could be a dangerous situation for the Big 12 because that offense has so much firepower in terms of skill positions. But also on the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot for us to unpack there, and we'll do so once we get to Sydir Mitchell, a commitment Texas just picked up yesterday. But let's focus back a bit on Johntay Cook because this is one of my favorite prospects in the entire class. I got to watch Johntay Cook live at a 7-on-7 and he did whatever he wanted. He was really tough to cover. His routes are really, really good. He's got a ton of speed and a lot of burst. One of the favorite things I saw when I was watching Johntay Cook is his ability to downshift and shift right back up. And what I mean is whenever he's running a route such as a slant, his ability to make that slant and be right back at top speed, or his ability to run a comeback and be right back at top speed whenever he catches the ball, makes one move, and then he's gone. Whenever you have that type of long speed plus burst, that's a dangerous weapon, and when you combine it in the routes he runs at this stage, I know the Texas faithful are very happy that Johntay Cook is a member of their class. Like I said, one of my favorite prospects in this class easily one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. It's a great addition for the Texas Longhorns, and it continues this Manning mania, as Texas Homer put it, that Texas Longhorns are experiencing right now. Something that I don't think is inherently surprising, because it's something we talked about here on this channel, that wherever Arch Manning went, there would be an avalanche, and right now we're experiencing that with the Texas Longhorns. So we've talked about Johntay Cook going to Texas. We've talked about the Arch Manning avalanche, not only in this video, but in subsequent videos I've put out before this one. Now let's talk about the defense, because whenever I talked about the two questions, we've talked about my questions for the offense. We've talked about that. Now let's talk defense, because Texas picked up a 4-star defensive lineman that I think is an incredibly important commitment for this class, and 4-star defensive lineman Sydir Mitchell. Now, Texas currently has 7 of the 18 members playing on the defensive side of the ball, and whenever we look at this, they have 10 of the 18 members of this class that rank within the top 300 players per 24/7 Sports Composite. So like I said, this class is really shaping out to be a good class, and they're already getting in very talented defensive players, including a 5-star safety. So adding in a 4-star defensive lineman is a great win for the Longhorns as they try and strengthen up those trenches. Bo Davis is a phenomenal coach and a great recruiter, and if he's able to get the talent, they're going to see results at the trenches. But a prospect we need to keep in the forefront of our minds, because in my opinion, and y'all could have a different opinion, and if you do, please go ahead right now down to the comments and let me know who you think the most important prospect still on the board for the Longhorns is, because to me, I think it's Anthony Hill. Anthony Hill, out of the state of the Texas, 5-star inside linebacker, just released a top 2 of Texas and Texas A&M. Whenever we're talking about that, you're talking about the 2 biggest brands in the state of Texas going head-to-head for a top player, not only in the state of Texas, but in the entire nation, the best linebacker, and that's an area of incredible need for the Longhorns. So yes, they're going to be battling for edge players. They're going to be battling for defensive backs. They're going to be battling for interior defensive linemen. But if you can get in Anthony Hill, I think that would be the biggest addition outside of the Arch Manning addition for the Texas Longhorns in this particular class. Because I talked about one of my questions being offensive line. Texas did a lot to answer that question last recruiting class. Now, we have to see how those guys develop, and I don't expect all of them to come in year one and instantly get it. Remember, I talk about at length how offensive line is easily one of the most difficult positions in football to make that transition from high school to college, because of the vast difference in strength, speed, and technique required to be baseline successful, let alone to dominate at that position. But at the end of the day, regardless of if it takes a year, Texas did a lot to address that question, and they've continued to do so in this class, and I don't think it'll stop. But that inside linebacker position is one where they had some misses at. And even though they've added some very talented players at that inside linebacker position, you do not argue with adding the number 1 inside linebacker in the nation, especially if he's in your state, in Anthony Hill. And because of that, because it's a position of such need for the Longhorns, I think that would be a huge win for Texas fans. Reportedly, Hill had a great visit the last time he was in Austin. He's yet to take that Texas A&M visit. That's going to be interesting, because we know what Texas A&M has done over the past year in terms of recruiting. So you feel great where you're sitting if you're a Texas fan, but you do kind of have this eerie curiosity as to what's to come on that Texas A&M visit. But at the end of the day, the fact that you're in these runnings, the fact that you're making the run in recruiting you have been right now, I think speaks volumes. And even if Texas doesn't win the Big 12, which I certainly don't think is necessary, they need to show improvement. And if they can even go 7-5, but look like a complete football team this year, that would be the beginning stages of improvement, because there was a lot for this coaching staff to address once they got there. There wasn't much in terms of offensive line, something Nino's Corner has addressed in a video that I find to be such an impactful video, because it really answers a question you get a ton if you're a Texas fan. People will tell you all the time, well, Texas has recruited with the best of them, but you haven't seen anything on the back end. And that's true. However, I do have a defense for Texas, because whenever I look at those recruiting classes, I don't see cohesion. I don't see cohesiveness, and I don't see a recruiting class that was really brought in with improving the team in mind. It looks to me like a collection of talent rather than the beginning building blocks to a football team. And that's really the highlight of Nino's video, talking about how Texas has vastly under-recruited the offensive line position, easily the most important position in the game of football. That's the position you've under-recruited, and now we see this current staff trying to right those wrongs. But because of that, yes, you're right if you're someone saying, you can talk to me all day long that this Texas class is elite. Previous Texas classes have been elite and they haven't done anything. You're not wrong, but what I would offer you is they don't have the cohesion that this class looks to have in its early stages and the cohesion that the last class absolutely had for the Longhorns. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how development plays out, but at the end of the day, at least the cohesion is there in these recruiting classes, and it's going to answer these questions. Whether it answers it immediately or it's the building blocks for answering these questions remains to be seen. But we can definitely see there is a vision that this current staff has, and they're doing their best to get this team to that vision. So, going to be really interesting to see what the month of July holds in terms of recruiting, not only for the whole of the nation, but especially for the Texas Longhorns, because they are absolutely capitalizing on hype right now, something I talk about that can be such a powerful tool, and now I want you to begin to imagine if they come out and really start surprising people and play a real good season. They can turn that hype into something really dangerous. I'm very interested to hear from you all. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.